have the correct time? Do you have the correct time? So it's stop to start?
Ladies and gentlemen, a new day in the conference of the International Conference of Higher Education in Saudi Arabia, bringing the world together. Very much welcome to this session. And can I ask you to sit almost on the edge of your chair? Feel comfortable, but sit on the edge of your chair in the sense of noting down questions and comments. Let me ask you a question. Who knows about Luddites? Can we raise hands? I saw Jan Sadlak mentioning it yesterday as a word. Luddites? Luddites? Okay, I'll come to that in a second. Because just not to confuse you, this session is about creative innovators. And wherever I look in the literature on higher education, I find a common statement. That is that universities are challenged to do better in contributing to society. Sometimes implicit, sometimes it's made very explicit. But it's everywhere around us, and I think we realize that. And that is not as much through, you might say, the research they do, or the way they teach, or what they teach, but it is very much, society is not as much looking at what we do at the inside, but what it delivers at the outside. What is the contribution of universities to the skills and competencies of their graduates, so that graduates indeed can contribute to society? What is it that universities do to create innovators, in short? That is related to Luddites. So what are Luddites? Luddites were the workers who smashed the looms, the mechanical looms in the UK at the end of the 19th century. And they smashed the mechanical looms, an innovation, because those took away their jobs. And that's one side of innovation. It's the side of innovation where society quite often feels ill at ease with innovation and with innovators. We know that innovation is the only way in which we create additional wealth beyond, of course, natural resources, but which are finite, where innovation presumably is infinite. But we also know that innovation is accompanied by changes in jobs, changes in the way in which we work. And here in the session, we then address these two other aspects of innovation. One aspect is how to accelerate innovation. That's a common aspect found throughout policy documents. Wherever you are, in whatever country you are, we want to accelerate innovation, but then, in particular, through the people who do this. For a long time, innovation has been looked at as a technical process. It's about research, it's about technical things. No, it's about people. It's people who carry the innovation and who make it happen. And then the question here, and it's a bit a daring question. Within our universities, do we have there, you might say, the silent Luddites? They may not be smashing any new technologies, although we also yesterday heard about resistance to the introduction of new technologies, but a substantial group which may resist the kinds of changes needed to bring about this kind of answer to the challenge of creating more innovators. So there was an interesting article in the Chronicle of Higher Education in the US where college presidents were asked about whether they thought that the rate of change in US higher education was fast enough, and more than half answered that they thought it was not, it was too slow or far too slow. And at the same time, they said it has to happen on, say, the faculty level. Innovation, change is not going to be something which presidents do, it's something which happens on the work floor. But it looked like the leadership felt unable to get the people on the work floor indeed in the mood and in the mode also of change. And maybe it's far too easy to talk about, say, faculty as potential Luddites, but the real question is then whether we have the leadership and we have the way in which we can go about reinventing the university to create, to answer that social challenge. University should do more and should be looked at as being the real source of the innovators. And maybe that's a disruptive change, where we yesterday discussed that when you look at technology itself within the university, that may not be the disruptive change. The disruptive change may be the different focus in the university, not towards the discipline and doing well in the disciplinary setting, but towards, say, the broader skill set of the graduates, which make them relevant for society and which make them also do better in society. And that requires a clear view on what it takes to be an innovator and how you can learn to become an innovator. And so these are the two intertwined themes we realized for the conference, but also for the session. So one is changing the way we teach and do research in such a way that we reduce the rising costs by taking advantage of the internet and of the knowledge on more effective ways of learning, yesterday's theme, and today focusing more in the universities on their contribution to society through graduates they deliver and through the research they do. And so I have this great privilege of, first of all, being here, but also leading this discussion with 4 distinguished leaders. And I can really use that term distinguished in the sense that I've seen all of them in different ways operate as innovators themselves within the university. First, Professor Giovannni Azzone of the university, which in my view is always too modest in presenting itself. I realize the university is in Italy well known, but outside of Italy by far not well known enough, I would say, because it has such a tremendous drive towards development in Italy. Second person is Professor Canje Dande, former is from the famous IIT of Kanpur, but who has himself now also established a new university. He's the chair and also the founder of a new university, which tries to very much answer these questions which we raised. And so he's first of all perfectly in the position with his own background, training and experience, but secondly he has also the drive to put in practice some of the ideas around the challenges of universities. The same applies also to Professor Rick Miller of Aولين College of Engineering in Needham, Massachusetts, the US. You might say a challenger of MIT. That is a university very close to MIT, where MIT does a good job. And so I'm going now saying outrageous things, but quite often it's not doing the right job with respect to the challenges of creating innovators. And that's precisely something in which this university concentrates, and it's more and more recognized as indeed the force which makes also other US universities change. And then Professor Saeed Al-Zarani, professor of the King Saud University in Chemical Engineering and director of the SABIC Polymer Laboratory, who particularly also looks at creating innovators from the Saudi perspective, because we all talk, the authors all talk from, say, the perspective of Western countries which have a long history in innovation, and I think he will do a great job in the sense of presenting that from the perspective of his experience here in Saudi Arabia. And of course, I'm going not to go in details on their CVs because you'll find them in your papers. And maybe one thing you have noticed, that is, there are only engineers sitting here. By the way, also only male engineers. And so one of the questions we should debate is this a debate among engineers and for engineers, or is this more for universities at large? And I think all of us have our opinions on that. And just already to give you a glimpse, no, of course, this is not about engineering only. It's about the university as a whole. So I'm going to invite them now, each for a 5-minute presentation. Professor Saeed Al-Zahrani takes a few minutes more in order also to particularly provide the Saudi context. But for the rest, we have the 5 minutes. And then we have a number of questions which we like to debate among ourselves and directly with you. Thank you very much for this part. May I invite Professor Azzone.
So thank you very much for your kind invitation and for your warm hospitality. Just a few points on two major issues. One is why do we have to change in a disruptive way, in my opinion, in university? And the second is what change we have to put in place. Well, I'm an engineer, and the first lecture you learn in engineering is that anytime your output change or the characteristics of your input change, you have to change the process. We are experiencing in university a dramatic change, both in the characteristics of the output, the products, the students we have to put on the market, and on the characteristic on the input, so the high school students who come to the university. What kind of dramatic change? When I look at the output, the two main issues are globalization and the role of digital technologies in disrupting industries all over the world. What about globalization? Well, till a few years ago, for a young engineer graduating in a European university, the idea of having the first job in a foreign company abroad was really uncommon, a few percentage. Over the last 2 years, we arrive at about 20% of our engineers who have a starting job outside Italy and outside Italian companies, and the similar figures we have in European universities. And even the 80% people who works for Italian companies work with foreign customers, with foreign suppliers, with foreign colleagues, which means that the engineers we are preparing in our university must be aware of what does it mean working in a global environment, which is much more complicated. It means that somehow the way of shaking hands that we in Italy use, and I use by talking to you, is Italian, is not general in the world. A second question, a second issue is the role of digital technology in economies. And I make you 3 different examples. One is there are some industries that are disappearing completely. We started with music and then to new media. And then we are realizing that even more, let's say, traditional industry like banking or insurances are experiencing a dramatic change. We are planning to have a reduction of 50% of employment in banking in European countries due to the role of digital technologies. So traditional industries are disappearing. Second, even in hard manufacturing industry, digital technologies are changing the way industries are proceeding. Just an example on 3D printing. In 3D printing, we are changing the economies of scale in manufacturing, which means that the kind of technology our engineers were dominating a few years ago are no more relevant in such industries. And third, within the digital industry itself, the pattern of change is dramatically increasing. Again, just a small example, you know, SMS. SMS in your smartphone have been always in communication industry a sort of cash cow, a sort of source of revenues. Well, the introduction of a small application that is WhatsApp that allow you to do your SMS without paying almost anything, in a few months put this market almost to zero, which means that even in the digital industry, the industry is changing very, very rapidly, which means that in the end, the people we are providing to the job market less and less will be involved in optimizing existing projects, in the existing process. They will be involved more and more in creating new process or creating new products. So we need something different. The second issue is the kind of people who arrive at university. Well, if I compare them with my generation, we've been a generation of, let's say, limited information. I can describe it in this way. So anytime we have to solve a problem, we have first to understand better how we could find the right information for that problem, which means we've been forced to model this problem, to understand what are the key points and the key issues in order to solve it in the right way. Now, the new generation is a generation of available information, unlimited information, which means that they can find the right they can find information available for their problem just putting on Wikipedia the name of the problem itself. Which means that my generation have been trained, let's say, almost automatically in a way to deal with limited information, to model problem, but once we find the information, it was, let's say, sure information. It was certified information because the books who have been written, have been read, and so and so. The new generation has a lot of information, but has less critical capacity to understand which kind of information is good quality, what kind can be helpful, and what kind of information, on the other hand, is, let's say, a sort of rubbish. Which means that if we educate new people as we've been educated in the past, we are doing two different mistakes. On one hand, we are not taking advantage of their capacity to assess information in a very wide way. On the other hand, we are not, let's say, trying to supplement their point of weaknesses in the critical capacity to analyze sources of information or to model problems. So, different output needed in the society, different input in the university. We have to redesign the process. Very briefly, we had a lot of stimulus yesterday in the workshops and in the talk show on, let's say, issues that must be considered in the new educational process. I just finished my introduction saying we believe that in the end you have to select something that is more important than others, and we decided to focus our educational process on 4 pillars. One is technical skill, because we do believe that engineers and architects, we are producing engineers and architects and industrial designers, need to have a strong technical background to doing their job, but this is not enough. We must add up 3 other things. One is cross-cultural sensibility, which is these people will be working in a global world, so they must be able to understand the different way of looking at the same issue deriving from different cultures, respecting the ideas that are within different cultures. Cross-disciplinary innovation, they must innovate, and the kind of problem that they must solve, they must be able to solve almost always need that different kind of technologies, of competencies are put together to solve the issues. And finally, social responsibility, because engineers and architects and innovators in general are people who want to change the world, and it's important that while changing the world, they take in their mind that the effect of their decision will be a change in the quality of life of other people, and so they must respect this in doing their decision. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Azzone, for drawing this attention actually in a pretty, I would say, straightforward way. Things that the output have changed and the input have changed, so that means also inside. But that means also you have to change in the process. Thank you very much. And then I go to Professor Dande, who has an elaborate slideshow presentation, but is going through that in, well, 5 minutes almost.
Salam and namaste. I would like to share some of my views. There has been some confusion about the slides and the thoughts, so the thoughts will take prominence. And just I want to show you a peacock, which is the national bird of India, and now it's going to be there when the rains are going to arrive. So I thought the picture of a peacock will be very useful for all of us to keep in mind. So today the topic we would like to discuss is more about how to inculcate an ecosystem of innovation. And for this, I would like to propose that in every country, there is a triad of 3 elements: the academia, the society, and the state. The state has a role in terms of promotion of innovation. The society has a very big stake in terms of promotion of innovation, and academia also has a stake in terms of promotion of innovation. Academia creates the ideas, and the ideas get converted into IPs by the state. And these IPs are then offered to the society, and the society converts the IPs into wealth. It could be social wealth, it could be cultural wealth, it could be industrial wealth, or it could be, in general, the wealth. So I think this circuit of ideas to IPs to the intellectual wealth is the cycle that is being operated by the triad of academia, society, and the state. I think this is the most important part. I'm not going to talk about the innovation in the society or innovation in the state, but I would like to talk a little bit about innovation in academia. So there are 3 functions, again, of the academia. The first one is teaching, second one is research, and the third one is to develop a pipeline of knowledge to wealth, incubation, entrepreneurship, industrial connections. These are all the efforts for converting knowledge into wealth. I think all these 3 functions of teaching, research, and then conversion of knowledge to wealth are the 3 important functions of a university, and in each one of them, there is a need for innovation today. So the first one is related to teaching. What could be the possible innovations in teaching? And yesterday we had a very good exposition of the technology and the role of technology. And I pose you a very crazy question. Like we have seen now the factories and the companies or the manufacturing facilities without a worker. The technology has gone to such an extent that you can see a car being made without a worker in USA. Can there be a university without a professor? If the technology is so advanced, if the technology is so good, we may not have a professor tomorrow. Think about it. I would like to tease your brains on this. However, the pre-processing technology for teaching, in-process technology for teaching within the classroom, and then post-processing technology that is after the classroom. So all these aspects, namely in-process, pre-process, and post-process, are important elements of innovation. And the most important part is that technology doesn't change education. We have to change education and make use of technology. Today, I think the technology should not dominate education. Education should remain our prime focus. And there is a need for reconstruction of teaching so that we can take the best advantage of technology. There are several forms of learning, like discourse learning, experiential learning, immersive learning, interactive learning. I think all these other aspects of learning have to be blended into a new model of education, particularly teaching. In case of research, I would consider that the European model of research or the American model of research and the Asian model of research. To me, the Asian model of research is extremely important. And the elements that I would like to mention to you, the first one is confrontation. There are many challenges in the Asian society wherein the confrontation is very important to understand the problems deeply, whether it is water, whether it is air, whether it is energy. I think the Asian context is very different, and we have to confront these issues. The second phase is ideation. The third phase is implementation. And the last point that about research I would like to mention, that research is not a push model, it is a pull model. The research should be pulled by the society and not pushed by the academia. Finally, I would like to mention very emphatically that innovation regarding knowledge to wealth pipeline is extremely important, for which the efforts of incubation, entrepreneurship, industrial liaison have been extremely good, and we had for the last 2 days exposition of these efforts. What are the key words that we would like to carry for developing innovators in academia? The first one, welcome ideas. Second one, appreciate efforts. Maybe some of the efforts will not succeed, so accept defeat. The fourth one is capitalize your intellectual property. That university which has got the maximum patents is going to be a rich university, not that university which has got maximum number of buildings or the maximum number of faculty members, but that university which has high number of IPs will be a rich university of tomorrow. And then the next phase is convert the IPs into wealth. That is also the function of a university. Obviously, there are some impediments like handling of a change, the fear of change. I remember 25 years back, I was doing the computer-aided design work. I told a draftsman that please learn AutoCAD because that's very useful. He was very disturbed. Next day he came to me and he says, you are going to cut my hands. And I said, God, forget, this is not what I want to do. He says, but if you do AutoCAD, then what is my role? So I said, your role is going to be much beyond AutoCAD. So obviously there is always a fear of change, and innovation always creates fear. There is also stonewalling. Many academicians don't want to change, and that stonewalling is also the impediment for innovation. So if we accept these limitations and if we create a new system, it will be a great day for the future of this world. I have also a new university to set up, and therefore I have got some brochures. I will circulate it as to how to implement some of these ideas in a clean, green project. But I think the whole world is clean and green, and we would like to mention that innovation and intellectual property creation will be the fascinating game for tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Dande, for what you do in the sense of developing ideas, but also putting them in practice in a new university, where I loved this term which you introduced, that a university is the pipeline from knowledge to wealth. That is a pipeline from knowledge to wealth. The idea, of course, is really capturing, it's actually also pretty far away from what most universities think about themselves, and also most teachers do. Where, if I may, I just wanted to make a small comment at the same time, because you said in societies, universities are looked at as the places of ideas. I would love to see it that way, and I think it was that way at some point, but in my experience in the US, in many other countries, in Europe, I've seen that role dwindling. I was a cabinet member, and I noticed that actually we didn't think too much of the universities, including myself as a former professor, in terms of generating ideas. So I think that has changed in the past years. There is some new, say, development, but I think it's also a challenge, indeed, to make, again, universities in this knowledge, from knowledge, in this pipeline from knowledge to wealth, the new places where ideas are born. Thank you very much. So now the floor is to Professor Miller, the first president and also founder of Azzone College. So this, I put it as the challenger of MIT.
Well, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's always a privilege to be here in the kingdom. I'd just like to say a little bit, just very little, some provocative statements that may promote questions later about the project that we've been working on. Azzone College is now about 12 years old. When I came, it wasn't yet a place. It was still an idea. The college consisted of 4 people from the Azzone Foundation and myself. They invested $460 million, and we had a mission to rethink what it means to be educated in the 21st century, to rethink what it means to be an engineer. The school has no academic departments. It has no tenure. Everything at the school has an expiration date, and the students have very low tuition. They used to pay no tuition until a financial crisis. It's basically a laboratory school. It's created in order to develop the DNA for a new way of thinking in the 21st century, and then to spread that DNA to many other universities. We've been visited by more than 300 universities in the last 3.5 years. We have deep partnerships with a number of very large places like the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, who is completely changing their engineering program because of results that we have learned together. We've concluded that in terms of education in the 21st century, we should change what we think about an education, that knowledge is now becoming a commodity. It's no longer what differentiates people. It's what you can do that differentiates people. So education should teach people how to do things, not just know things. We've concluded in looking at the definitions that our definition of an engineer is somewhat different from the mainstream. We believe an engineer is a person who envisions what has never been and does whatever it takes to make it happen. It begins with vision, not with mathematics. Engineering is not a body of knowledge. So the accreditation boards have some work to do. Engineering is a process. And in fact, we use as an illustration the aircraft industry, which was developed in a bicycle shop in Ohio, not in a physics lab at a university. It's a way of thinking and innovating. When you look at the world through that lens, we conclude that there are three things that need to change about engineering education. The first one is who we teach. We're teaching the wrong people. I'm standing here because I was good at mathematics in high school. I had no idea what an engineer does. But if an engineer is a person who envisions what has never been and does whatever it takes, then we need to cast a much broader net. We need to bring in people who are creative. That means, in fact, a lot more women. At Olin, 50% of our students are women. That's an interesting change in paradigm. So this leads us to, I think, a central question that avoids definition in almost all of these conferences that I've been in, and that is, what exactly is innovation? What is it that the output that we're trying to achieve? There are so many confusing definitions of this that I think it helps to have some real clarity. I will tell you, first off, my impression is that the definition that I've carried for many years in a university, I believe is wrong, okay? I was basically trained that innovation always starts with science, that in fact it begins with just-in-case science, which is what universities do, and then we throw it over the wall to the tech transfer office on the campus, whose job it is to commercialize intellectual property. And then apparently they have this magic bowl of what I'd call pixie dust. They sprinkle on this IP, and it somehow magically turns into companies. And these companies then generate revenue and jobs, and eventually that's how society benefits, so the government can spend more money in the just-in-case science area. And that's pretty much it. I think there's two problems with that. Number one, there's lots of other kinds of innovation that get left out. And secondly, this pixie dust jar is a little bit hard to define. It's the magic. It's also where most of these things fail. So what is a better definition? In my view, you need to differentiate it from creativity, which in the words of Sir Ken Robinson is the process of generating original ideas and insights. This differentiates from inventiveness, which is the process of generating original ideas and insights that have value. And finally, innovation is the process of taking original ideas and insights that have value and then implementing them in ways that change the way people live. If you don't do the implementation, it's just an idea. It's not an innovation. A really profound innovation is an innovation that changes the world so profoundly that people cannot remember the way it was before it was created. My kids can't imagine how the caveman must have lived before they had cell phones. They just don't have no memory of how the world could have been. So we believe that innovation, every innovation you can think of, is the combination of three factors that occur at the same time. Feasibility, because nothing happens in the real world that isn't feasible, which is what we study primarily in the sciences. But also viability at the same time, because unless it is cost effective, unless it generates revenue, no one will buy it and no one will make it. And finally, probably the most important one is desirability, because unless in the cultural context, faced with choices in the free market, people choose to use this instead of the alternatives in large numbers, it doesn't change the way people live. And in the 21st century, it's desirability more than the others which make the market. Have you heard of Facebook? One of the largest capitalized companies on the stock exchange today that didn't exist 10 years ago. What does Facebook sell? Think about that. I think Facebook sells an opportunity to meet one of the most fundamental human needs that's always been there. Every human that was born has a fundamental need to be the most important person in somebody else's life. And the way we are genetically wired to do that is to tell our personal story. Now, we've developed a society where that's difficult and uncomfortable to do, and the facilitators of Facebook use technology to make that very possible. And look what happened. Unless you understand human needs, you will not be able to capitalize on the opportunities for innovation in the 21st century. And I think I'll stop there. Thank you. Oh, I should say something about this book. I put this book up because one of our colleagues, Tony Wagner at Harvard University, has done an in-depth study of innovators in order to understand what their background is that led them to be so creative and how you can incorporate that into an educational model. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please sit down. I have a question for you. I think it was a perfect presentation, but value. Can you say a bit more about value? Is it that only about dollars or Saudi reals, or is there also something else than monetary valuation?
I think of innovation as a process that changes the world in profound ways so that people live in a different way afterwards. Certainly, it can involve money, it can involve devices. Being an engineer, I thought of innovation in the 20th century as innovation that resulted from the development of the airplane or the development of the internet or the development of the computer, these sorts of things. But sitting on the board of trustees at Babson College next door, which is a business school, I got a completely different perspective. And I realized that, for example, the development of the credit card may have changed the way people live in profound ways. And that doesn't involve science, okay? And how about religion? Religion has changed the way people live as well. That's an innovation. That's changing the way people think on a large scale, and it doesn't involve dollars.
Right. No, I was thinking about a discussion at one point in the Netherlands where the question was asked, what is the greatest innovation ever? And it turned out that there was agreement that that was a lawyer who had invented the sea law, which created a body of knowledge in which all countries agreed that they would not pirate each other on the sea, which created a win-win for everyone involved. So interesting indeed to think about valuation, and in terms also of the way in which other disciplines contribute to innovation rather than only engineering. Just also to broaden us.
Let me just mention that in the US, I think you would not hear lawyers identified as the source of innovation in very many places.
Okay, right. This is, I think, a different discussion which we might have. We have our fourth speaker, which is Professor Al-Zarani, and he's from Saudi Arabia. He has a lot of experience, both in industry as well as in the university.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everybody. I actually would like to thank the chairman to give me the more time for presenting my talk today for two reasons. One of them is maybe he trusted me that I am representing Saudi society, so thank you so much for such trust. And number two is again, he felt that maybe as a Saudi working in, hopefully to work in innovation, maybe have something different. In reality, I will get advantage of what has been said in the morning with my colleagues. Again, fortunately that all of us are technical people or maybe engineering. So we will touch some of the information about the innovation. I will go and start right from the, I would say, the lowest level or the introduction level, and then I go step by step towards the final of my talk. If you don't mind, just to listen to me for a few minutes. As my colleague was stated, what is the innovation? In our society, really, we confused when we change when we understand the word in Arabic, and we confuse the innovation with invention, with discoveries, and when we call it ibda', ibtikar, اكتشاف, and at the same time, we got this word little bit confused in our, maybe the translation confused us. And innovation, it's actually the umbrella of the invention and discoveries and everything. And at the same time, it is the implementation of the idea and take such idea to the real practice or to the real life, but should be new at the individual group or the society group. It can be reinvention, modifying or changing an innovation to make it adaptable and implementable. And it's nothing more except it is the blend of what we really need with what exactly possible. We have heard that the word innovation, it's actually the key of success. In the world of competition, I would really call it, and especially for countries like our countries, it's the key to survival more than the key of success, because you are living in a competition world. And as Wagner said in his book that just displaced, that the invention is the transformation of the money to a knowledge, and then for innovation, complete such cycles and change that knowledge to a value or a money at the end. So innovation, simply one can say it's a summation of invention and commercialization or entrepreneurship. Historically, what I have found that there are almost 4 generations of innovation. It started long back in 1900 to 1940, where we had learned that at that time, where R&Ds started, labs, and it's very small marketing and finance issue in different functional disciplines. That generation, or that generation we call the first generation, from 1940 to 1975, plus what we got in G1, it has been introduced, the project management and team, stage gate products, brands and computers, etc. And the third generation, from 1975 to 2000, we start hearing about strategic planning, venture capital technology, roadmaps, quality, regional cluster, etc. And in the latest, from 2000 till now, we hear the new word, which actually the 4th generation, which is radical innovation, or what they call it radical innovation, where more competitiveness and more innovation had been started. Simply, in the book of Wagner and others, people have differentiated between 2 to 3 types of innovation. I think recently, maybe the best classification will differentiate the innovation in 2 parts, incremental or radical. And incremental, it goes step by step as what we are doing every day, but the radical one, which is a breakthrough, the innovation, or what some people, they call it game changers. It is new dominant of a transformation or design a transformation to the real market or industry. And maybe the real example that just stated of Facebook or iPhone are, my expectation can be called a radical innovation, because it have a very huge change. And in a survey with the Price Waterhouse of 157 executives in 25 different countries and 30 sectors, shows that radical innovation is essential for the competitive growth, and most of the advanced organizations and companies are doing. Why we are doing innovation? Simply, such growth is really amazing. So radical innovation worldwide is required, and you can see easily how the worldwide will be changing until 2050. For us, even more in Saudi Arabia, because we are almost, in 2012, we had 26 million as a population. In 2050, we will cross 70 million, expecting to cross 70 million or even more population. So we have to think about an innovative way, innovative approach to help our country and to help our society, and hopefully to work on in radical innovation. This is the just basic scheme of the innovation process, where it started and what happens during the collecting and ideas and generation ideas, etc., screening, evaluation, etc. And here, a lesson that one can learn in the organization, in the universities, etc. We do have to have a system to survey the ideas, and not just putting boxes everywhere in the university to get some ideas from some people. I think you have to do a campaign to get ideas, and then reward the people who bring innovative idea to your society and to your system. Of course, the innovation cycle always long, and it starts development through growth, and then it reaches a maturity level, and after some time, such product will become declining. The golden path to more innovation, it's the innovation need itself, the supporting culture, and consistently and persistently fighting evolutionary and organizational pressure, and to perpetuate what worked in the past. These are the main path for the main innovation. Of course, I will not go into the details of what has been classified as the dimensions of innovation culture. However, it's built on a lot of tools and with rewards based on certain goals and knowledge and resources and risk-taking. All these pillars of innovation and dimensions has to be taken care during development of any innovation. As my colleagues were stated, people are again confused between the creativity and innovation. Simply, creativity is the development of an idea about products or practices, services, or procedures that are novel and potentially useful to the organization. Creativity, usually we used to hear, if the mother of the invention is the necessity, my expectation is the mother of innovation is the creativity. And it's from the creativity you go to the innovation, and from the innovation, as we said, which includes the both invention, entrepreneurship, etc., it will go to the final marketing. What are the major characteristics for a person to be creative? How are they different? Personality, they must have traits and cognitive, creative level, domain-specific knowledge, and with intrinsic motivation. What does it take to be creative? He has to have a time and hard working and with a mental energy. The persons that he should have certain skills and features. He should be able to design and think, and critical thinking in his design. He should collaborate with others. He should be also agility and adaptability features, initiative and entrepreneurship, and it's accessing and analyzing information, and also he should have capabilities to calculate risk and to tolerate failure. The killers that should really all the time stop the innovation is the excessive focus on extrinsic motivation, limits set by the superiors, and premature evaluation, close controlling supervision, competition in a win-lose situation, and control of decision-making. Sometimes these are barriers that prevent innovation. In our societies and in our organization, how to really elevate, how to control, how to portray an innovator is you have to think of partnering the innovator and parenting the innovator to be as a parent for the innovators considerably during the stage, especially during the school, if they are students, and give them a good time without any restriction to discover and to think about what they are doing. Parents of innovators take one kind of evidence-based trial and error approach to parent them. Of course, you have to teach the innovator also. You have to go through all the procedures for teaching them through structure and non-structure approach based on different learning opportunities. And again, you have to motivate the innovators. Most of the time, if you have a great idea from someone, it has to be motivated, and also it has to be empowerment and encouraged. Of course, the culture of the innovation need to be created at the society, and especially at the universities level, where you have to think about creative thinking skill, adaptation, and addition to the innovators. What causes the innovation failure? This is maybe among the last few slides. The poor leadership. And leaders need to create actually an environment and condition for the innovation to flourish. And I remember a story of Ted Hoff, the one who created in 1960 when he joined Intel as a 12 student, just joined the company, when he had a project from a Japanese company about a calculator, how he could easily been asked to simply do a modification for the calculator to include 12 functions. When he talked to his leader and his chair in that company, and he said he can do it in one function with different programming, and now he encouraged him to do so. He is now the founder of microprocessor, and every machine in the world now uses microprocessor. So such leadership encouraged the people. Again, absence of collaboration, that's a killer. Bureaucrats work, shut down the ideas. Job description between people also kills the innovation. Mission statement sometimes control the people, and strategic planning in certain case let the people think only in one direction. The culture also sometimes kills, especially that if you are not thinking about new ideas. The tradition, to a certain extent, caught up with the past and losing opportunities for future. Of course, reduced R&D spending, this kills the innovation, especially for even the student or researcher, etc. Lack of coordination and slow development and competitions are a failure, I would say, example of killing the innovation. Just simply to show the most innovative companies in the world and how much they spend. Maybe I will not talk about that much. However, this is the list. And how much are people spending in the R&D which lead to the innovation. I think that is very, very impressive to help the innovation worldwide. Maybe this curve is showing very important data to us, at least for us in Saudi Arabia, what we should do in order to compete. And you could see the number of scientists and engineers per million of people and how much they spend on R&D and innovation also as a percentage of GDP. It easily shows how the increase of such numbers during the, as a percentage of R&D, we almost lies here at the bottom of the curve, if you could see Saudi Arabia. However, we should work hard in order to go vertically and horizontally in both sides, at least vertically, and maybe that's the reason Ministry of Higher Education is doing a lot of work on sending many students abroad to study. So we have to work in both directions as a percentage of what we are spending, real spending on the research and development and schools and the education, and what also as a number. Thank you so much for your time, and I apologize for the delay.
Thank you very much, Professor Azzone, because you really complemented, I think, the other speakers in the sense of merging international knowledge with Saudi knowledge, but also very much looking at a profile of the innovator, where the others also talked about that profile, but what happens, should happen in the university. And in a way, it was quite interesting. I was looking at your presentation in the sense of, these are the tags which a university should look at, in the sense of, are we doing the right thing in developing the creativity? Maybe we are suppressing creativity. We actually quite often don't know. Are we indeed training students in risk-taking? And you mentioned it as responsible risk-taking. Are we training them in failing and at the same time also having some, resistance to failure, or at least some way of emerging from failure? Are we doing those things? And I think in that way also your presentation was just a perfect complement to what we had. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I should say first ladies, because we have an overwhelming majority, if I counted right, of ladies here, and gentlemen. If you want to look at what has been presented here, you can find that on2014.sa. Yes, not .com, .sa. Thank you very much. So now we have had the first part, which gives the basis for our further discussion, in which I'm going to ask a number of questions, and then ask the speakers to reflect, but also the audience. I'm tempted to start with the question whether the ideal creative innovator is male and an engineer. Or is that, well, Rick, you mentioned already something about drawing in also women. Or is that's about broadening, say, the gender scope? But is it also broadening about disciplines? Is it about medicine? Is it about also law? Is it about, is there also creative innovation to be found in sociology, in humanities, in other fields? Maybe for you first, Floor.
Yeah, well, I think that problems in the world don't come with little labels on them. They don't say I'm a sociology problem and I'm a differential equations problem. They're just problems. And the way to approach this from an innovation point of view is it uses a certain part of the brain which is quite different. There is an interesting book called A Whole New Mind by a fellow named Dan Pink recently, which explores this in some detail. And he points out, and there, I'm sure you are familiar with the now quite mature work in psychology about the left brain versus the right brain. And it turns out that women in larger percentages have a dominance, or at least a better balance, between the right brain and the left brain. And that predisposes them to be able to think holistically and to think in ways which are not limited to a discipline. So it's not surprising that you find a significant fraction, maybe a surprisingly large fraction, of innovative ideas that come from women. Now, I think this is a problem when you look at engineering as a discipline. At least in the United States, only 18% of the students studying engineering are women. So that's part of what I meant earlier when I said we're teaching the wrong people if our mission is to produce creative innovators.
All right, yeah. Professor Donner, if I may go indeed to you and broaden the question a bit in the sense of, are actually existing universities, say the top 100, they're all older universities, or the majority is older. So they are the MITs, Harvards, Yales. Are they able actually to bring about this, what also Hans Ariansen yesterday presented, this bringing together of disciplines around problem solving, about questions which come from the outside? you very much pointed to that. You said a university is going to be looked at in the contribution to wealth creation, to ideas. And are we talking here about the kind of disruptive changes which is not going to happen in the old universities, but needs the kinds of initiatives which you develop, which he developed? Of course, I bring it to you in a way in which you have to say, yes, it's going only to happen through new ways of doing things.
So first thing I want to just mention that the most important branch of knowledge is common sense. And there is no degree, bachelor's, master's, or doctorate given in any university. So to me, that is the most important prerequisite for innovative mind. As far as the gender, I would consider that if you see performing arts like music or dance, and clearly the female, they have done extremely well. So I think the gender discussion is not really relevant in the sense that creativity exists throughout. As far as the universities which are old and more than 100, 200, 300 years old, I think the reason why they remain on the top is they reinvent themselves. It's like a snake which removes the skin and comes up with a new life. So it's very important for the universities to innovate themselves so as to create a new character, so as to create a new personality. And obviously the knowledge envelope is expanding, and therefore that expansion happens primarily because of the universities. So I consider that the old universities or the new universities, challenges may be different, but innovation remains a challenge for all of them, irrespective of their existence.
Can I turn to you, Professor Azzone, because you also talked about the G4 innovation wave from 2000 onwards, and you call that radical and disruptive. Does that, in your view, go along with the potential for reinvention, as it was called, of the older universities? Are the older universities able indeed to reinvent themselves fast enough? What is your view on that? And what actually is your view on the chances for Saudi Arabia, a relative newcomer in education, to just, say, leapfrog and be there where MITs and the Harvards and the Yales and the Cambridges and the Oxfords have still trouble to transition?
I do agree with you. It's really, the radical innovation is not so easy. And at the same time, one cannot expect that a regular university can jump to a radical innovation. However, they have to think, and they have to start thinking about such innovation in order to lead at least the industry in the future. Because nowadays, as you said, we are not moving with a high speed, or with a speed reasonable to take us to the radical innovation. However, there are a lot of good universities in the world. It doesn't have to, the whole university goes and work in the radical or towards radical, but at least some of the departments, some of the units, some of the research units work heavily to direct the radical innovation. The survey that has been done by for the most leader for the companies, it tells us that most of the industry are looking very heavily on the radical innovation. That's number one. For us in Saudi Arabia, we have to, I think, work hard in both incremental and radical. I will not expect that we will jump to radical so easily, because radical is something that needs a lot of resources, a lot of people, and a lot of ideas. And I remember example of Toyota, when they generated ideas, every year they are generating almost 2 million ideas from people inside and outside. And there are around 300,000 employees working there. Almost 6 ideas per person comes and being analyzed. This is sometimes can speed up the process of innovation. Procter & Gamble as a company, they are getting 50% of their ideas from outside their border also. So I think for the universities should also work locally and internationally in order to level up their level of innovation in both incremental and radical, and at the same time always think about changing and not keeping status or fixed in their daily work. We have a lot of obstacles here. However, we have to work hard. As I said, we have to get out of the curve that was showing in terms of number of scientists and engineers, especially related to the technologies, at least, and also other important field, and especially in the medical side. But at the same time, in my opinion, we still have to work hard in order to spend on the R&D in order to go up more and more.
Right, but do you also think that universities, in the way in which they position themselves, could, say, take advantage of the relative youth to be ahead of some of the older universities?
Well, this is a good question. Again, I think so. You are correct. The new, maybe universities or the new launched universities in Saudi Arabia, at least, if I talk about example in Saudi Arabia, they have to define their way much advanced than an old universities. Mm-hmm. And we do have an example, KAUST in Saudi Arabia now is working to that direction. Mm-hmm. I'm talking again about our local society. But again, they're supposed to work more with innovation, with innovative students and creating the environment to do so.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Can I ask the same question of Professor Azzone, who I've seen also working hard in terms of showing his leadership, if I may call it that, in the sense of making these moves in an older university, well established, providing half of the CEOs of technological companies in and at the same time feeling that, as you mentioned it very explicitly, that so much has changed at the outside that you have to revise your whole university. Do you feel that, say, the age of your university works against you? Is that, and what kind of leadership do you need in order to not feel too much burdened by the fact that you have been there for a long time, where tradition can be an advantage, but also a substantial burden?
Yes, I was thinking about what are the main issues for helping your university to change, let's say, put in this way. And I was thinking about what are the point of weakness of my colleagues, or scientists, or engineers, or architects. And I think there are two main issues that, let's say, distinguish their professional life, but their human life. When they are scientists, they look at the long term, they think in the future, innovation, and on the other hand, they take risk, because anytime they do research, they take risk. When you look at their normal life, they don't have a clear vision of what's going on, so they have their own branch, but they are just thinking to go to the lectures every day and not thinking what is needed is changing. And the other point is they are not risk taker somehow, because they are, let's say, employed in a, let's say, quiet industry, quiet job. So I think that what is needed in a leadership in a university is to try to counterbalance these things, trying to do two different issues. One is to provide a long-term vision. You must consider the fact that any time you introduce a change in a bachelor in university, you will see partially the result of your innovation, maybe after 6 years, when you will finish the bachelor and then you will finish the master, and even then you will just understand if the boy or the girl will be employed. You don't have any information about the real outcome of your innovation. So university is a long-term business, and you have to, let's say, provide ideas so that you have put in place all the possible, let's say, source of information, analysis, and whatever, to try to do your best. Taking into account that you are betting on other people's life, because if we are doing the wrong choices in our Bachelor of Science, in the end, our life will not be affected, but the life of these guys will be affected. So it's providing a vision is the most important thing on one hand, and the other is, let's say, helping other colleagues to be, let's say, sure about taking risk. So let's say, helping them to say, well, no problem, be quiet, this is the right way to do that. We started, we did all the analysis, be quiet. I think that this is needed, and the paradox is that to get these results, you should have a long-term horizon on one hand, but on the other, I think that you cannot be a creator staying for a long time always in the same position. So you need the persistence in the role, but at the same time you need change. So I think the third, let's say, recipe for the leadership in university is a leader who stays long enough, but is also able to provide a, let's say, change in the leadership of the university that is guided, that follow the same, let's say, line of action. So stay enough, but not too much, and helping the successor to be the right person.
Thank you very much. I think that is something which was also brought out in quite a bit of the research, that the leadership of universities generally is more effective with respect to the rating of the university when the leadership is more dynamic, but there is an average age of 8 years in dynamics. And the second is also if it is actually better attuned to the academic atmosphere. So in general, the people who are better researchers do also better as university presidents in terms of the way in which the university works. I mean, that's some of the statistical background, and of course, with all of the details accompanying it, because there's a lot of variation in this. So, by the way, the floor is open, so if there are questions from the balcony or from here, then please go ahead. Shall I first ask Jan Sadlak? Could you please be brief, because you're known as a great scholar with also great thesis. And now you're too brief. That was not the idea. Is there a microphone? Yes, please, and then I'll repeat it. So the greatest innovation may not be sea law, but maybe the wheels in the suitcases. There's a microphone.
From the presentations, is that the innovation somewhat leads to the product or the service, new service. The beauty of the work in the university is that and it means that it has to work. The engineers are doing something which have to finally at the end to work. But the beauty of the work in the university is the negative is also a valid proposition. While in the innovation leading to the product, it has something which works. So we know it that why society is accepting and the industry is supporting university is that this is probably the best place where the good answer, but also negative one, because in the scientific work, negative is also an answer. That's not the case in the innovation, which has to be product or the service.
Right. Thank you. Let's go take some more questions. Phil Alba.
Thank you. Very, very brief comment leading to question for several of our colleagues up there. I think a deep problem that has been mentioned in this panel is how to change traditional universities, how to make them innovative. And it's been mentioned that one of the strengths of the American higher education system is that traditional universities, some, not all, have had the ability to change over time. One of the problems in India is that the traditional universities have changed not at all. And when India has wanted to create something new and different, they tend to go to completely new institutions like the IITs. So my question to Sanjay is, why is that the case? And does it have any lessons that it might be broader, including in Saudi Arabia, where traditional universities, even the new ones, have significant difficulty in creating kind of new models? And my question to Rick is, when he and the Olin Foundation were looking around to spend $400 million, it's a lot of money, why did you choose to start a new institution with all the new infrastructures needed, rather than going to a good American existing school of engineering and say, hey guys, we want to create something new, here's $400 million and let's do it?
Thank you very much for these two questions. Can I also invite a question from the balcony? Yes, please.
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Assalamu
Please
alaikum.
go ahead.
My question is for Dr. Sanjay again. He said society, state, and academia, all three contribute to the innovation process in any country. He mentioned the academia in detail and what inside the universities we can do to convert the knowledge into wealth. But what if the obstacle is in society and state? If you may, Dr. Sanjay, add some light into what the academia and the university personnel, leaders and faculty and students could do towards the society and state to encourage the innovation. Not inside the academia, but the role toward the society and the state. Thank you.
Do you mean also bridging, say, the gap between, or
no,
transferring the knowledge?
He mentioned the academia role in teaching, research, and converting knowledge to wealth, and many other issues. That's within the universities. Right. My concern is what the universities can do towards enhancing the role of society and state toward interventions and innovations, because maybe the obstacle is there, not within the universities. Because all three are responsible for innovation.
I understand. Thank you very much for that question. And Professor Sanjay Dande,
so before I forget the questions, I will first answer Phil's. You see, the implosion is a bigger threat to the sustainability of the universities. Usually, the universities become rigid, the viewpoints become very strong, and the resistance to change is very high. And the society and the state then puts pressure on the universities to change. If that doesn't happen, then as a natural thing, bypasses are created and the new systems are created. So obviously, creation of the new academic institution is one way of sustaining innovation. As I said earlier, that the ability to change yourself is an extremely important driver and is a very important part of sustainability, and innovation is a part of that. So obviously, the older universities have to remember that if you don't want to fossilize, if you don't want to have an implosion, then it is important to sustain through innovation. If that doesn't happen, then obviously the society creates new institutions, challenges the old myths, challenges in many ways. Fortunately, the leading universities of the world historically have been able to go up and down, but change eventually, And the time span I'm talking about is not 1 year or 10 years, but I'm talking about hundreds of years. As far as the second question...
Sanjay, just to try to be precise on your answer, you say in India maybe it hasn't happened as far as you can see, but it is happening now. Why? Or you say it takes more time.
Well, in India what has happened is that there was earlier the pre-British education, which vanished. Then we have the British model, which also got replaced by the IIT model. And the IIT model is also now about 60 years old and is under threat because the world has changed. And the engineering science-based education premise on which the IITs were created is indeed no longer as strong as it was 60 years back. So the expansion in the system has an opportunity as well as a threat. So it can create new innovative institutions, but it also creates a challenge for the sustenance of the old IITs.
Thank you. Yes.
I want to answer the second question, if you permit.
Yes, please.
This is regarding the triad that I mentioned about the society, the state, and the academia. And I would say that as far as the other triad that has been suggested or mentioned regarding the women, the society, and the state, I would consider that this is also an important triad. It requires considerable support from academia, and to some extent, I would say that in the very old history of the world, the role of women in academia was very strong. As a matter of fact, the invention of the zero was supported by the daughter of the person who invented the zero. And zero is not a very simple concept in mathematics. So right from the very ancient times, the women have played a significant role in academia. But if you look at the history of last, let us say 500 or 600 years, then obviously the picture is different. However, I do feel that now with the new awakening throughout the world, I think this triad of women, society, and the state is rapidly going to change. And academia is going to play a significant role, not the industry or not any other organization. To me, academia has a very strong responsibility to look at this triad and support and encourage it, because it is the fundamental concept that has to come back, which was there thousands of years back.
Thank you very much. Yes. Rick, the question on why did you need the bypass? Idea is universities can change internally, US is not doing badly, some say, and at the same time you created a bypass rather than going straight to MIT and say, I'm going to contribute to the changes in your engineering school.
Yeah, the Olin Foundation considered a number of alternatives before they decided to fund a new school. The first idea they had was to do exactly what you suggested, Phil, find a really good school that's doing almost everything right and just make the grant to them. Frankly, from them, there would have been an enormous number of advantages of doing that, much less risk. They could have picked like the #1 ranked school and just said, you guys are doing things terrifically, here you go. They concluded that that would do two things, that would incentivize them to not make any changes because they had just gotten the good housekeeping seal of approval, so apparently they must be perfect. Secondly, everyone else would say, well, you know, game's over. Those are the changes and it's all done at that one school. They then considered finding an institution which had everything else except an engineering school, and maybe just endowing the engineering program on that campus. That seemed like a practical approach until they talked to a couple of hundred university presidents about the process of change, and they concluded that if they did that, they would inherit the academic culture existing on that campus. The faculty in engineering would be hired under the same principles as the faculty in the other disciplines. They would have a provost, they would have tenure, they would have peer review, they would have research publications, and no change would happen. So they eventually concluded they had no choice but to start over. And then as they did a little bit more research into the field, they found a very interesting chapter in a book by a fellow named John Marcus called 400 Years of Resistance to Change, which is a discussion about American higher education, which maybe in a global context has been more open to change, but the process has not been what you would hope. Marcus points out that, for example, Thomas Jefferson, in frustration in discussing the need for modern languages, meaning essentially German and French, so that he could talk to the Europeans rather than Latin, he couldn't get Yale and Harvard to budge, and concluded that he needed to start over again and create the University of Virginia in order to create change. So he did it, but it didn't happen from within. Harvard resisted the embrace of the natural sciences for decades before they brought him in, because this seemed like a very practical kind of thing where you did experiments. And then the whole introduction of the land-grant college system, which involves welcoming into the educational process in America all people from all backgrounds, and not just those elite in the society that were headed for Harvard or Yale. All of those were inventions which changed the landscape, which did not come from within higher education.
Thank you very much.
I just
Yes,
want
please.
to interject and tell a story to the audience that when General Eisenhower, after the Second World War, was the president of Columbia University, and then he became the president of the United States. And in Washington, D.C., a reporter asked him that, why did you leave Columbia and came to Washington, D.C.? I mean, Columbia is a very prestigious university. And he says, I just couldn't handle the politics of Columbia University. I thought I will take something lighter, and came and became the president of United States. So that's for the universities.
Yes, sure, yes. Yeah. No, that's, I think, a common agreement that the university is more difficult to, say, bring in the world than maybe a government is. And just adding to these questions, I talked a lot with people in business, how they, within the business, change fastest by creating new entities or by changing existing entities. And this, I think, is the common knowledge among at least the people I talk to, and I think it has been also documented. That's Philips, that is also Axo, that is a number of major companies among the top 500 in the world. And they say, without exception, we do this by setting a separate entity for innovation, or not for innovation to innovate the rest, but a separate entity which is the innovation. And not by trying to change the whole structure, well, yes, trying to change the whole structure, but from a vantage point in which, say, it's clearly shown that it works. So the Aulin line would be very much supported by what industry generally does as a strategy for innovation. But it's an interesting way also of thinking at universities. So how should you innovate? Maybe just start with one faculty or one department, a separate group. It's a way in which also Hans Ariansens showed how the University of Utrecht changed. His college became actually the leading college in the innovation of the university. But so that might be an additional point. Vijay, please. Vijay Tadani, and then maybe also Liz.
Excuse me?
Yes?
May I ask?
Yes, please. Yes, please. The balcony always has first.
First, I would thank Ministry of Higher Education and all the organizers, from male and female members. I really appreciate their efforts in this conference and the 3 or 4 other conferences before. We started from English excellence in teaching, to excellence in research, to excellence in community services, and now to excellence in innovation. In fact, I would like to ask any member from the Ministry of Higher Education to question about the absence of any unit or center in innovation in the Ministry of Higher Education, which will take care of any units in the universities, and which will take care of our students, not only in higher education, but also in the in the schools, elementary and intermediate, and in the secondary. Because research said that the innovation started from this stage. And I would like also to ask Dr. Saeed about his experience with Intel and our students who took very high prices in Intel in all the subjects. What the role of the university in taking care of those students? Do they engage those students from the secondary schools? Do they take care of them in the university? I think you have an experience in King Fahd of Petroleum and Minerals in taking care of those innovators. or creative students.
Thank you so much. Can I also invite some...
Coincidentally, my question is also in the same direction, which is saying if creating innovators is referring to the student rather than the institution, so that the output is a bunch of innovators, then if the panel can comment, it'd be very nice to see across the continent's example of what do you find lacking in the raw material that comes into the institution that you service, I mean that services them at the higher education. Do you feel there is an element of unlearning involved before learning to be innovators is required? Or is there something which can be done in the schooling system which will help natural innovators to come into higher education who can then polish them further?
Thank you very much. Liz, please.
Excuse me, I have a question, please. Hello.
Thank you. This is related to previous questions, but I wanted to ask each of you from different points of view, how do you get innovation out of the university into the society? We know of Facebook, we know of the famous innovations, but I'm pretty confident that there is much innovation and creativity and projects being developed by students and faculty on campus that never leaves campus. So my question is, how do you make better connections with the larger society to take advantage of innovation and to be able to make that bridge out to the larger society? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think also that would be an excellent question to conclude with. But first, the question on, I think it's a very important question of course, universities are at the end of the educational career. So what about innovation in primary and secondary education? And should that require also a specific setup of the ministry?
Well, if you allow me to just answer the first two questions raised by our sister here, I think the Ministry of Higher Education is doing a good job, at least on terms of excellence, and they have started with establishing more than 14 centers of excellence in research in all the Saudi's universities as a first step. And later on, they started again with a potential center on the new coming universities. Towards all of these centers' vision is towards product-oriented research, which lead to a product at the end of the work. So this is one aspect. The other aspect, I think there is a new initiative also just launched or which is going to be started, is exactly same at what you have suggested, is to start innovation centers at the universities. And that's quite excellent idea, at least at the university level. Each university can create a centers of innovation in multi-aspects controlled by an expert in the culturing the innovation right from the invention, from the beginning, from the idea until maybe towards end as a product at the end of the journey. So these initiatives I think is quite excellent, and we need more from the ministry to go in this direction. And the second question regarding the students, what we are doing for students in order to speed up their knowledge, their capabilities towards innovation. I remember, and also the first question raised here about teaching the student the failure. In Penn State University, the first course in engineering is 101 fail. And you imagine how to think about failure before you start. In 101 fail, they teach the student how exactly, in the engineering school, how exactly learn from the failure till he started building the knowledge of knowing new, so he has to go through a failure project to get learn of, to learn on of such behavior. Number two, more than that, I think each university has a major potential to look up for the bright students and lead them to the innovation, in starting with their ideas, encouraging them, incubating them from invention side until, even if it is, teach them how to do it from in a virtual or in a small example from invention to the commercialization of such a product. This is a very important issue. We may lack this in the universities, but I think most of the universities are required to do so for the student side. And this example, which we have seen with the guy in Intel, we do have in our universities a lot of bright Saudi students. They can do a better work on innovation. If I answer the questions.
Thank you so much. And by the way, what you mentioned about Saudi universities now putting a lot of emphasis on entrepreneurship is something which also will be here brought to the forum in the next session. So I'm already now advertising, marketing the next session, but where the fourth speaker also will speak about entrepreneurship at the Saudi universities, which is in a way part of the translation of what you just said. And if I take that together with your question, Liz, if I may. So her question is how to get it out. Maybe there is much more to the eye than what we see, and how to get it out in the openness. You said something already about intellectual property rights. That's only part of the story. I mean, that's only there where everything is already, say, put into paper. There is much more. So how to get it out, and also what are the major points to be done in the university? Should you have a compulsory course of entrepreneurship in every faculty, humanities, in medicine, of course in engineering? What are the, say, ingredients of making the university more responsive to this question of creative innovators?
So I think the business of a university is to deliver minds and not simply products. In the process of developing people and delivering them to the society who are creative, who are innovative, who are analytical, who are critical thinkers, these are the attributes with which the minds have to be equipped and then thrown into the society. In the process, we may have some products, but ultimately these minds, when they go to the society, creates the products and the wealth in some sense. The university tries to create an ecosystem in which all these minds get developed through the coursework, through the projects, through the electives, through the field work. I think the spirit of innovation is, like I say, as you say, Pentium inside. So there has to be innovation inside a university. And to some extent, I personally believe that everyone, including the teachers and the administrators, have to understand that. However, a center of innovation or a course on entrepreneurship or innovation, they are welcome. They will not be hindrance, but I don't think that by just doing it, you achieve the overall ecosystem of innovation.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Rick.
I'd like to just add a little bit to this, because I think there's a misguided emphasis on top-down thinking here. Imagine, for instance, that you had a society that really discovered music and wanted everybody in the society to be excellent musicians. None of the students in kindergarten through 12th grade owned a violin, but the head of the education department decided to create a center for classical music at the very high level. And no matter how much money they spend, it's not going to be successful until you begin with the foundation. It's about people. And let me bring this down to something really quite easily understood. Every place that I've been, there has been meetings at the strategic level about what kind of new research do we need at this place. So we'll do a competitive analysis of other universities. Berkeley is doing X, Caltech is doing Y, but they're not doing Z, so we're going to create a center for Z. And then we advertise this and we try to find faculty that will be competitive. Almost never works. I've almost never seen that successful. Instead, what happens is that you hire a dozen new faculty members in lots of different fields, and within 5 years, the most creative and entrepreneurial ones rise to the surface in your environment. And then if you just look at the people that you have, you know what centers are going to be successful because it's about the people. And I think it's very easy to overlook that. Innovation in particular is about attitudes, behaviors, and motivations. It's more about that than it is research or knowledge. And if I could do one thing that's probably politically incorrect, instead of talking about universities having a triad of purpose, teaching, research, and service, I would replace that with teaching, creativity, and service. And instead of talking about teaching critical thinking, I would be willing to change the emphasis to creative thinking. And if you start that in K through 12, in the future, you'll have a lot more innovators.
Thank you very much.
Well, I think
Professor
that,
Azzone.
yes, you cannot force anybody to be a creator or to be an innovator. So you cannot force people to follow courses and then they will learn to be a creator. But you can give them the idea, the possibility to do something. And so the university should become a sort of source of opportunities so that people can take advantage of these opportunities according to their own attitude. So I fully agree. We need an ecosystem. We need diversity. Diversity means diversity of cultures, diversity of gender, also diversity of disciplines, to have a situation where engineers, management, people from management, industrial designer, architects work together so that they understand different way of putting the same thing. So I think the role is not just to provide teaching in entrepreneurship. Of course, it can be useful to have it so that if anybody wants to start a new company, know the ABC of doing that, but this is not enough. If I may add up one thing on the impact on society, I think that this is very important. We changed our mindset over the last few years. When we started our term in a university, well, we are in a society in Europe that is in a crisis, and our crisis is unemployment, young and youth unemployment. And in the first period, we said, well, what we have to do is just to do in a right way our own job. So to educate in a different way people so that they could be employed or they could create new business or whatever. Now we realize that this is not enough. We need to educate people so that they understand the problems of the society and they somehow can do their part in trying to solve this problem. So we created what we call polysocial, so to give them opportunities to do something for social responsibility within their career. So let's say opening up a museum or restructuring some old building with their own knowledge or whatever. And again, we think this is not enough. We are now working with other institutions in the same ecosystem, trying to put our forces together, let's say, letting a strategic plan for the region growing up from the bottom. So we realize that we are unable to have a top-down vision in our region, which means that we need something. We need a plan for getting out of this situation. We need a plan for the future. And so I think that universities have the need, they must somehow be able to provide other institutions of a vision of what's going on in the world, because we have a lot of more contact with the rest of the world, and at the same time to try to cooperate with other institutions to build up, flourish somehow, a new idea for the society.
Thank you very much. With this, I'd like very much to conclude with a kind of a summary in the sense that we implicitly, actually, and no one actually challenged that, said that universities have to change, are changing, but maybe have to change even faster. And just as a kind of a comment, this was implicit, no one argued about it, while maybe 2 years ago, people would have looked at that a bit different. So times are changing in this respect with the view of the role of universities with respect to innovation in society in a broader sense. This pipeline, it's beautifully casted in words, pipeline between knowledge, ideas and society, wealth. That pipeline is working, has worked, but well, it needs actually be broadened and the flow needs to speed up. We agree on that. We also agreed very much, I think, on the notion that it's not making everyone an entrepreneur who's going to start an Apple or a new kind of big firm. I'd like very much to comment there that it is about trying to contribute as much as possible to making everyone a problem solver. Because whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're hired by an entrepreneur, I would like to hire someone who doesn't solve problems. I'd like to hire someone whom I don't have to tell exactly what he or she has to do, but I'd like someone to say this is more or less where I'd like very much you to help me, the firm, to do things. So I think this notion of problem solving, I found back time and again in the replies of employers in the evaluation of their people. They are very much involved in, can people do a job, in the sense of, can they not do a repetitive job, but can they do a job which changes day by day and every time? And I think also the important points from our meeting here were, again, reinforcing which has been throughout our sessions and which is not the practice of most universities, which is diversity. The ecosystem in which all kinds of streams come together, in which gender streams come together, in which also streams of people from different cultural backgrounds come together, where they are very important in building a kind of a new world, new ideas, new, traits in minds, where indeed, Rick, thank you very much for your contribution there. Minds are too often understood in academia as simply the cognitive side and not the attitudes, skills, and the way in which those skills are being also applied. So I would very much like to thank all of you, first of all the presenters, for their presentations and also for their contribution to the discussion, but also all of you here for listening, but also for contributing with your questions. So thank you so much, and a big hand for the presenters.